So, once again, thank you for being here this morning. We are, again, videotaping this for some people who might not be here today, and so that they can watch it at their leisure. So, this is the second module of the Fit for the King program, and it's entitled Foods That Empower and Foods That Devour. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with this today. And again, as we talked about the last time, just to give you a brief recap of what we talked about. Again, this is from a book, about half of this presentation is from a book by Dr. John Madeira called Fit for the King. And it's the concept that, God has blessed us with health, that He created us with health, right? It's not until the fall that disease comes into the world, okay? He has good plans for us throughout our lives. He has chosen us to be here at this specific time and place, even here today. There's some message that you're going to get today, I hope. And we're here for His glory, to the best of our ability to stay healthy, to cooperate with His plan, helps us to be used as Him as an instrument. So, and we know that certainly to be true. Every day of your life has been ordained and written in a book, even before you were born. That's a powerful thought, huh? God's already planned good things for us using skills, talents, and gifts. And here's the big problem, is that we lack understanding. And so one of the reasons that I do this, one of the reasons that Dr. Madeira wrote this program, meant to be done and given to faith-filled congregations, the idea being to give you some of the tools that you need to make better choices. And here's the overall goal of this: to make it your goal to live long, live well, and to die healthy at a ripe old age. Okay, that's kind of a nice thing to shoot for. We talked last week about the fact that the medical system, the healthcare system in the United States, as good as it is, does certain things very well. Emergency care, surgical care, disease care, does that pretty well. But from a preventive standpoint, from a wellness standpoint, from a keeping yourself healthy standpoint, we spend an awful lot of money and we don't have good results with that, from that standpoint alone. And so the idea being that it puts more of an onus on you, puts more of a burden on you to do the right things to help you maintain your health. You're in charge of your health. You're in charge of your body, not your doctor, not the hospital. Okay? We talked about living in a health continuum. If you remember, I said on one side of the continuum is the healthiest you could possibly be, doing all the right things, eating all the right things, thinking all the right thoughts, praying fervently, all the right things. All right? You're the best you could possibly be. The other end of the spectrum is the worst I could possibly be. I used to say eating Hostess cupcakes, they're not around so much anymore. How about double stuffed Oreo cookies? Sitting on the couch, getting no kind of exercise. That's the worst you could be, making all the wrong choices in your life, being disconnected from God, making all the wrong choices. We all live somewhere in that continuum. We live sometimes of the day I live closer to one end than I do towards the other end. Sometimes of our lives we live closer to one ideal than to the other end of the spectrum. So we live in this continuum. And the idea is to make choices along the way that keep moving us towards that better us that we can be. And every choice that you make, every small choice that you make that's in a positive direction is going to help you and is going to bring you to a different place than you were without having made that choice. Do you follow that? Does that make sense? Say yes.
Yes.
Okay. So here's the things that we talked about you have to really keep an eye on. These are the 5 things that we need to keep track of. One is proper nutrition, and we're going to really talk about that today. That's what we're going to get into today. Proper exercise we talked about, proper rest, having a positive mental attitude. We're going to talk about that in the 5th module, all about stress. And a properly functioning nervous system. We talked about how I, as a chiropractor, come into play with that to make sure that the master system of your body, the nervous system, is functioning fully, is functioning without any kind of interference at a spinal level. And that's what chiropractors do. We'll talk about that several times during the modules. So let's talk a little bit about nutrition. Now, the thing with nutrition is that there are, if you don't like the report that came out this week about coffee, wait next week, there'll be another one. And it'll probably tell you to drink coffee. You don't like the one that came out about red wine, wait a week, because next week they'll probably tell you can't. Right, have you noticed that? So it drives you a little bit bonkers, because you think at one point, now you know it, now you got it, now I've studied it, and then a week later everything's changed and it's different again. Salt, here's a perfect example. Salt, right? If you have high blood pressure, they always told you, make sure you lower your salt content. Well, a study came out not too long ago where they said salt has absolutely nothing to do with that. So, you're kind of jumping back and forth. So what we're going to do with you today is give you some of the basics, okay? We'll give you some of the things that we know to be true and give you some rules of thumb, okay, to use. So here's the first rule of thumb. Eat live food, not dead food. So what do I mean by that? Eat fruits, eat vegetables. These are living things, although they've been picked, all right? They are now, or at one time were live, okay? As opposed to boxed, things like cookies, okay? Things that are boxed, that were dead, that were never alive, okay? So you get more nutrients out of the things that are living or were living. Secondly, is if you can't pronounce it, you probably shouldn't be eating it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the nutrition labels on the side of things, and of course the ingredients are there. One of the things that I'd like to remind us is that very often the product with the least amount of ingredients is probably the healthiest product for you, because there's less preservatives, less additives, less conditioners in there. That's with few exceptions. There are a few vitamins that are hard to pronounce, and you should eat those. And finally, eat organic foods whenever possible. Now, for those of you that live here in the convent, I understand that you're out of control with this. You don't really have the control over what you are served as to whether it's organic or it's not organic. However, you do have the control of choice, of what is there, what are the best choices I can make. You know, Weight Watchers says that when presented with a buffet, look at it as a menu and pick one item as opposed to a sampler and have a little bit of everything, right? Those of us that are, buffet experts try to get a little bit of everything, and then what do? We go back for the really good stuff and have seconds, right? So the idea is to make proper choices within the framework that you find yourself in. For the people that are perhaps living outside of the convent, who do prepare food for themselves, who do buy their own products, some of this organic information will be more information to them. So here's what we mean by organic. Organic fruits and vegetables are fruits and vegetables that are grown without pesticides, without herbicides. They're usually planted in fields that are free of, yes, that says sewage sludge. There are some chemicals, there are some fertilizers that come directly from sewer sludge. Not something I think I want to be eating vegetables that came from. But synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, all are removed from the environment that these fruits and vegetables grow in. Okay, we'll talk more about that in just a minute. Organic beef and chicken are animals that are fed with grains and foods that are grown organically. Okay, that's the next step. That's the next removed. Organic milk comes from cows that, again, are fed organically with only organic grain. So herbicides, pesticides, growth hormones never enter into these animals. And organic eggs, again, same idea. The idea that organic feed is not given to them. Growth hormones and antibiotics not given to them. Antibiotics is huge. Antibiotics, the use of antibiotics in animal production is the largest use of antibiotics in the world. That's where most of the antibiotics that are produced goes to, believe it or not. Because the animals are raised in such conditions, such disease-filled conditions, that in order to keep them healthy long enough for us to slaughter them, we have to give them antibiotics. And so those the residue and the remnants of those antibiotics remain in the flesh and the tissue that we eat. There's a vegetarian adage that says if people had to slaughter their own food, there'd be far more vegetarians on the planet, right? Most of our food comes nicely packaged in those little trays wrapped in saran wrap. Just the part we want to see, none of the parts we don't want to see. So now, some foods, and again, this is more for the people outside that are making choices themselves at the supermarket. Some foods are naturally resistant to pesticides. Organic foods can be a little expensive. They're not nearly as expensive as they used to be because so many more people are demanding them that it's brought the price of a lot of natural foods and organic foods down to a much more reasonable level. But they still are a little more expensive than the other stuff. So this group called the Environmental Working Group has studied lots of different fruits and vegetables, and they found that they fall into two groups. There are certain groups of fruits and vegetables that do tend to have pesticide and herbicide residues. And so those are the fruits and vegetables that you are you are more likely to want to spend your money on just to buy the organic form of it so that you know that it doesn't have any of those. Do you follow? There's another whole group of fruits and vegetables that tend not to hold on to pesticides and herbicide residues. And so for those, you can get away with buying the normal, shall I call it the inorganic form, okay, the not organic form, and save yourself some money. So again, for those on the outside that are making their own grocery decisions. So here's they call it the dirty dozen. This is the dirty dozen. These are the fruits and vegetables that do tend to hold on to pesticide residues. So the way you read this is, for those who can't see it, peaches is number one. 97% of the peaches that were tested had some pesticide residue. 87% had 2 or more of the pesticide residues. Apples, very high. Sweet bell peppers, celery, nectarines, strawberries, cherries, pears, grapes, spinach, lettuce, and potatoes all tend to hold on to the residue of herbicides and pesticides. So these are the fruits and vegetables that you would want to buy organically. Spend the extra money and buy them organically to save yourself that exposure. That was just what they tested. It doesn't mean that the question was imported grapes as opposed to domestic grapes. Doesn't mean that I couldn't give you this statistic, but what they tested were the imported grapes. Here's the clean dozen. These are fruits and vegetables that tend not to hold on to pesticides. And if you look at them, a lot of them are vegetables that we associate with husks or large outside, thick outside skins that we tend to discard, right? So you've got things like onions and avocados, pineapple, mango, sweet corn, asparagus, sweet peas, kiwi, bananas, cabbage, broccoli, and papaya. They tend not to hold on to residue. A great one there is broccoli, because that is such a great natural food. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But these are the fruits and vegetables that you don't necessarily have to buy organically because they tend not to hold on to their residues. Again, more for those that are on the outside. So we look at, the question was asked last week about these nutritional labels. And just to point out a couple of things with nutritional labels or nutritional facts, as this one is called, is you always have to look at the very top line. It says serving size. So in this case, they're talking about cookies. So the number of cookies that all of this information applies to is 3 cookies. I don't ever just eat 3 cookies. Okay. So you'd have to extrapolate, right? So if you had 6 cookies, you've got to double everything. Now that doesn't sound like it's very important with cookies, but if you take something like a soda, and you look at the side of a soda. Well, soda bottles, I think we talked about this the last time. One time the Coca-Cola bottle was a 7-ounce bottle. A 7-ounce, it was this little bottle. Then it went to 12, I think it went to 10, then it went to 12. Then it went to 16. And now, when you walk into the deli and you see the display of sodas and most drinks, okay, you know what size they are? They're 20-ounce bottles. Now, if you read the size of it, it will tell you all this wonderful nutritional information, and I think on the side of the 20-ounce bottle, it says 2.5 servings. Well, I don't know anybody that shares that with, 1.5 other people, okay? Most of us drink the whole bottle. So when you drink that bottle, and again, I'm just using soda as an example, you have to multiply all of that information. So in this case, it says calories 160. Well, if I have 6 cookies, well, this label doesn't apply anymore. Now it's 320 calories. You follow this? Yeah. So that's the number one thing. That's what's very important, is that you have to look at the number of servings per container, or the serving size that's usually listed right at the top. So they're up front with it. They're telling you this. And then the information that follows is applicable. A couple of things to look at. Total fat, of course, is important. A little bit further down, you'll see where it says dietary fiber. A lot of times, the higher the fiber, it'll start to balance out the levels of the fat. So, for instance, again, talking about Weight Watchers, the point system that Weight Watchers use, the higher the fiber level in that particular food, the lower the points. So even though the food has calories, even though the food has fat in it, the fact that it has so much fiber in it tends to drop the point value from that standpoint in that particular system. It lists some of the vitamins and the percentage of daily values. We used to talk about the RDA, the recommended daily allowance for certain vitamins, and what percentage of those vitamins, that recommended daily allowance, does this particular food in this particular amount accomplish, okay, give us. Let's see what else. The ingredients at the bottom we talked about. Again, like I said, the smaller the ingredients, probably the healthier it is. As a rule of thumb. One of the things that this one has is in the cookies. It talks about enriched wheat flour. Anytime you see the word enriched, it means that something's been taken out and added back in. Okay. So, for instance, if you look at your milk in the morning, right, it'll say enriched with vitamin D. Okay? What that means is that in the pasteurization process, the vitamin D was taken out. It just by virtue of that process, we're going to talk more about milk later on, that vitamin D was taken out and had to be added back in. Another big thing is vitamin C in orange juice. You'll see it'll say enriched, vitamin C enriched. Again, because during the pasteurization process in creating the orange juice, it kills the vitamin C. The process kills the vitamin C or removes the vitamin C, and so they add it back in. Okay, so that's what enriched means. And of course, we've got some other things here: hydrogenated soybean oil. A big one is high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup. There's a for those that are technically capable. There's a website under YouTube. There's a video, runs for about an hour and a half. It's a professor from the University of California in San Diego, and he does a whole thing called Sugar the Bitter Truth is the name of if you Google that, Sugar the Bitter Truth. And it's an hour and a half, and it talks really about how sugar, not only is it not good for us, which we've known for years that it's empty calories, but he actually posits that it's actually a poison to the system. It's actually a poison to our body. And high fructose corn syrup is sugar, okay? It's concentrated sugar. And it's used in so many products nowadays. And again, in this video, he talks about it being probably the #1 reason for the obesity problem in the United States. As our fat intake in our diet has declined through the years, because we've listened, they've told us eat less fat, so we've been eating less fat. Well, as we've been eating less fat, our obesity levels have gone up. And the only thing that's gone up along with that is our consumption of high fructose corn syrup. And so he's convinced that that's the #1 factor. Interesting. Okay, so now we'll have a little bit of fun. These are God's top 10 superfoods, okay? And I'll tell you right now that in God's superabundance, there's actually 11. One day I was making a list for people to take home with them, and I put all the superfoods on one side, and I put the devil's bad foods on the other side, and I had one more superfood. I counted, there's actually 11 superfoods. So for those of you that are going to catch me, you caught me already. So these are, superabundance. God's top 10 superfoods. Now they're not in any particular order, and there are certainly other good foods. These are foods that are very, very nutritious, very whole foods. There's some foods here that if you just pick 2 or 3 of them, you could sustain life. You could live on them. I don't know if you want to eat broccoli and salmon, every day for the rest of your life, but you could, and you'd have all the nutrients that you need. Okay. How about anybody have any idea what might be on this list?
Blueberries.
Blueberries. Who else? Anybody?
Almonds.
Almonds. Okay. Almonds. Great source of calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, copper, protein, and anti-inflammatory nutrients. One of the modules we're going to talk about anti-inflammatory foods. All foods in your body processes in one of 2 ways. The one path it goes down leads to anti-inflammatory chemistry. Chemistry that will actually reduce inflammation in your body. And that's not only inflammation from a musculoskeletal joint standpoint, but it's also inflammation at from a cellular standpoint, which is now being studied as the root cause of many, many illnesses. Everything from osteoporosis through diabetes, through the big 3, cancer, cardiac, and stroke, and on and on and on. So it's really the leading edge of nutrition and the biochemistry of disease is this concept of cellular inflammation. So anytime you see this, the idea that it's an anti-inflammatory nutrient, it becomes that much more important. Other foods that we eat go down a different pathway and create inflammatory chemistry, quite the opposite. So it creates inflammatory chemistry. So the idea is that you want to emphasize either on the lunch line or out at the grocery store, you want to emphasize the foods that are anti-inflammatory in nature and minimize the foods that are pro-inflammatory. Right? Make sense? Okay. And again, we'll get into that in a later module, but. When it talks about kissing cousins, these are other foods that are of like nutrients. So that if for some reason you have an aversion to almonds, here's some other nuts. And nuts, by and large, are very good sources of energy. A lot of people will say that if you chew on a handful of almonds late in the day, it gives you that 4 o'clock boost. When you're starting to slow down. Kissing cousins of almonds are walnuts, peanuts, and cashews. And it's not the salted cashews that are, deep fried. It's natural raw cashews. Apples, of course, right? Apple a day keeps the doctor away, Mom always said, right? So good source of potassium and phosphorus. Very good source of fiber, right? We were talking about fiber earlier and how important fiber is, not only in terms of your digestive system, but in many other ways as well. Phytochemicals, which are antioxidants, vitamin C. Antioxidants, there's something in our body called free radicals. As we get older, these radicals are they're parts of atoms that get spun off, and we know now that they do tissue damage. They start to damage the DNA of the cells. So as much as possible, what the antioxidants are designed to do is sweep these free radicals up and keep them out of the system so they don't do this damage to our DNA. And that's what antioxidants are. You'll see that quite a bit. Studies indicate apples decrease the risk of heart disease, cancer, stroke, and may lower diabetes risk. And kissing cousins of an apple is a pear. Okay, so think of similar fruits. Avocados, right? Great source of monounsaturated fatty acids, lots of different vitamins and minerals. Again, high in fiber. The kissing cousins, asparagus, artichokes, and extra virgin olive oil, or EVOO, as Rachel Ray likes to say. Right? She coined that term, and now it's in the dictionary, EVOO. Extra virgin olive oil. And these are, avocados. I think as a kid growing up, I don't think I ever saw an avocado. I think you have to be in California to see an avocado. But they've made their way to the East Coast. And I have to say, I've actually started buying them and using them at home. We were getting them in restaurants, and my daughters love it as well. So, yeah, it's kind of a new fruit for us. Beets, okay, this is, George Bush's broccoli was my beets, okay? Beets is still not my favorite. It's not something that I can eat readily, but it's extremely helpful, especially in liver and gallbladder function and cleansing of the liver and gallbladder. There's factors within beet juice especially. Both the greens and the fruit itself can be used. Kissing cousins of turnips and carrots, sweet potatoes, Swiss chard, if you know what that is, and spinach. Sweet potatoes, again, for those that are listening on video who cook their own meals, sweet potatoes, you can cook sweet potatoes three or four at a time. Have one with dinner. I eat them cold. Once they're cooked, they're sweet as can be. With nothing on them, no butter or anything, just scrape them out and eat them. They're delicious. And again, high in amino acids, vitamin A, vitamin C, and beets. I don't want to give beets too much advertisement. Blueberries, okay? It's said that if you walk out of here and you make one change in your life, if you have a handful of almonds and a handful of blueberries every day, that's it. That's all you have to do to make a big change in your nutrition and the antioxidants and the vitamins and the fiber and the nutrition that you're bringing into your life. A handful of almonds maybe in the morning and a handful of blueberries in the afternoon. So now I don't know. Do you have access to fresh fruit like this? Is there trays of blueberries laying around down there? No.
We have fresh fruit every day.
Okay. Great. Well, blueberries in the cakes is not quite as good as fresh blueberries.
And fruit in the morning.
Okay.
They have blueberries in the yogurt too.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and in desserts.
Okay, good. Great source, again, fiber, antioxidants, again, vitamin C, vitamin K, all sorts of minerals, vitamin B vitamins, zinc, copper, magnesium, the minerals. The blueness of the blueberries, the blueness of red grapes is something called anthocyanin. Anthocyanin. And again, it's a very powerful antioxidant. It's the reason why red wine now is known to be healthy. A little bit of red wine every day, is an antioxidant. Kissing cousins are, again, purple grapes, cranberries, boysenberries, raspberries, strawberries. You see the pattern here? Just about every kind of berry, right? And of course, the bluer the better, blackberries and cherries. Okay, so here's broccoli, and again, this is, again, your rule of thumb is if you ate salmon and broccoli the rest of your life, you'd be far healthier. Okay, and you literally, those two foods in particular are foods that you should add more to your diet. So when you are on that lunch line and you see either salmon or you see broccoli, grab it. Okay, now, a lot of times salmon, they may cover it with all sorts of sauces. That's okay, take it back to your table. A little bit of the sauce is not going to bother you, okay? I mean, if you're having it every day, it's a different story. If you feel more comfortable, just push the sauce aside, and just eat the salmon itself. But here's broccoli, again, very, very high in fiber, very high in lots of different antioxidants, vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin K. Tumor prevention qualities in several studies. Kissing cousins are Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, and kale. Everybody know what kale is? We tend to use kale as a garnish, right? On trays, a lot of times you'll see kale used as a garnish. We don't eat it so much, but there's some great kale dishes out there that you can, nowadays you just get on Google, for those of you that Google, and you type in kale recipe, and you'll have 100 kale recipes. So if there's anything, you're in the supermarket, again, for those on the outside, you're in the supermarket and you see something, you say, gee, I wonder what I do with that. Just go home and Google it, and you'll have more recipes than you know what to do with. Carrots, best known for vitamin A, right, for eyes, right, we've always known that. Carotene and eye nutrition, good source of fiber. Vitamin C, vitamin B6, vitamin K, again associated with clotting. Kissing cousins are turnips, sweet potatoes, and beets. So again, these are God's top 11 superfoods. Okay, these are the foods that give you great nutrition. These are the choices to tend towards, and we'll give you some more guidelines at the end of this. Eggs, great source of protein. Eggs took a bad rap about 15 or 20 years ago, right? We all started eating egg whites and throwing out the yolk. Guess where all the nutrition is? It's in the yolk. I'm going to say all of the studies that told us that yolks were bad and led to higher levels of cholesterol, all of those studies were overturned in subsequent years, but you never heard about it, okay? So this is one of those things where you heard about it 1 month, but then a couple of years later they told you the opposite. You can eat the whole egg. Studies show that people who are trying to lose weight that eat 2 eggs a day actually lose weight faster than people who don't eat eggs, who eliminate from their diet. It's a great source of protein, especially the organic eggs. You also can find what are called omega-3 eggs, high omega-3 eggs, which omega-3 is a fatty acid which is, again, an antioxidant, an anti-inflammatory. And if you can get those, again, if you're buying on the outside. Now, again, Eggs Benedict is not the same as having a nice healthy egg, okay? So we got to keep this in perspective, no cheating. Kissing cousins are organic meats such as chicken, beef, turkey. I've never had a duck egg or a goose egg. I couldn't tell you what that tastes like, but not so common. But if you go to there's a number of farms here on Long Island that are organic farms, and you can find all of this stuff quite easily. Eggs are a huge source of protein, a very low-fat source of protein. And we'll talk, at some point, I hope we'll have some time to talk about cholesterol and whether or not cholesterol is really a good indicator. I just had this discussion with my cardiologist, and he actually admitted to me that cholesterol is not such a great source of predicting whether or not you are going to have heart disease. The studies with cholesterol had to do with people who already had a heart problem and whether or not they would have subsequent heart problems. However, 80% of the people who have their first heart attack don't have normal cholesterol. So it's really not a good predictor of future cardiac issues unless you've already had a cardiac issue, and then it becomes a little bit of a better predictor. But it's really, they're starting to look twice at cholesterol and whether or not how important it is. And unless, of course, your cholesterol is up in the 400s, then that's a different story. Okay, garlic. Now, garlic, antiviral, anti-inflammatory, antibiotic, and anti-person if you eat whole cloves of garlic. I had a patient in my office, a wonderful man, and he got into the garlic kick a couple of years ago and was eating for breakfast several cloves of garlic and then coming into my office. And not only did I have trouble staying in the room with him, but we literally had to start putting him in rooms that had windows or doors we could open, because when he left, you couldn't use the room for about a half hour. How his wife put up with it, I don't know. But there are great forms of garlic that make it very easy. Certainly cooking with garlic neutralizes a lot of that odor. There are forms of garlic now that you can take that are that don't have that they remove the odor-causing chemical of it. The reason that happens is that that particular chemical is actually processed by the body through the lungs. It's excreted by the body through the lungs. So you could brush your teeth all day long. That's not where it's coming from, okay? The odor is coming from deeper. The odor is coming from the lungs. So that's why it kind of hangs on as long as it does. But we've known for years, right, that garlic is just a tremendous food. Again, antivirus. I mean, there's not too many foods that are antivirus, anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, antibiotic. Lots of other good stuff. Polyphenols, again, is an antioxidant. Selenium, calcium, vitamin C. I mean, the research on garlic goes on and on. I don't think anybody argues that. It's in, not only is it in Italian mother's chicken soup, but it's also in Jewish chicken soup. You know, they call it Jewish penicillin, so.
In Spanish dishes.
Yes, yeah, Spanish dishes. You know, almost everything, I find that when I share a recipe with somebody, it almost always seems to start with, well, you take some garlic and oil. Kissing cousins to garlic are onions, scallions, and leeks. Tomatoes. So now we got garlic and we got tomatoes. We're moving in the right direction here, okay? So again, good sources of many of the different vitamins, amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. They're the molecules that the body uses to make proteins. The proteins become the building blocks of everything else, okay? Every other tissue in your body. And again, with all of these foods, you know, realize that, you know, it's an amazing thing the body does, that it takes a tomato and turns it into a liver cell. Or it takes a piece of garlic and it turns it into a lung cell. Do you follow that? Because I mean, all of these, everything that you eat is taken by the body, broken down into its basic atoms and molecules, and then turned into something your body needs to create. I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing. It's really an amazing biochemical process. So, that being the case, you know, what do you want to put in your body? For the guy that grows up, you know, and does nothing but eat, you know, French fries and McDonald's every day, I mean, it's an amazing thing that the body is so resourceful that that guy manages to survive. You want to put the best building blocks into you. You want to give yourself the best basics to have the best building blocks that as your body's recreating, and they say about every 7 years, your body turns over all of its cells. So you want to give it the best building blocks it can so that those cells are created with the best basic building blocks. Tomatoes, rich source of antioxidants. You see that keeps coming up, right? Antioxidants. Tomatoes are becoming famous for their lycopene content. Seem to be helps the skin be less affected by harmful rays of the sun, which we're so, you know, concerned with at this point in time. Kissing cousins to tomatoes, watermelon, grapefruit, and papaya. That's a great looking tomato, huh? Talk a little bit about some hierarchies here. You know, if you can get fresh is always the best, all right? Especially, again, those on the outside of your cooking, fresh is always the best. The next level down is frozen, because it's usually flash frozen. So it comes right out of the orchard, right out of the garden, and it's quick frozen. And then last is canned or boxed. After that, dried, you know, maybe a little bit above canned. But frozen, you know, frozen fruits, frozen vegetables, very, very good. And they maintain most of their nutritional value. Canned, not so. Canned, once you pour that water off, you know, most of the nutrients are lost. In terms of cooking, obviously raw is the most nutritious, right? And then after that, steaming, and then after that, boiling. You know, my grandmother, God bless her, I mean, she boiled everything to death, right? I don't know if your grandmothers did too. I mean, that broccoli came out. I never knew broccoli was crisp. I thought broccoli was always mushy. But no, so, you know, again, you want to just warm it up a little bit, just get it a little bit tender, and then it's done. You know, don't overcook the fruits and vegetables, for those of you that are cooking on your own. And here's the bonus. Here's God's superfood number 11 on a list of 10. These are walnuts, okay? Excellent source of omega-3 fatty acids. Again, the omega-3 are the anti-inflammatory fatty acids. Lots of minerals, lots of vitamins. And again, very healthy for you to incorporate nuts into your diet. These are great snacks. Almonds, cashews, and peanuts are kissing cousins. All right? So God's top 10 make it 11 superfoods, okay? Okay, now here's the bad guys, all right? Now, devil's 10 worst foods. We'll have fun with this. Who thinks they know what's on this list? Anybody? Sugar?
French fries.
French fries? Okay, that's some good guesses.
Candy.
Donuts. Do they serve donuts downstairs, do they?
Once in a while.
Yes, on occasion.
Okay, well, there is just absolutely nothing good about a donut besides how it tastes. Okay, there's no nutritional value, 400 to 500 calories, full of sugar, bad fat, and bad calories. When you take this, it's just your blood sugar level goes sky high, but then what happens? Your body adjusts and it drops to the other end. So it'll give you this short little boost. It's like any other sugar. It's going to give you this short little boost, but then your body's going to bring you down to a lower blood sugar level than you were. And that has a lot to do with energy. Every time I put this slide up, somebody goes, "Oh, there's my favorite." and you can all tell where these come from, right? Probably Dunkin' Donuts, right? Because there's the Boston cream, and in the back there is the looks like the blueberry crumb. Yeah.
Jelly.
The jelly donuts, of course. Chocolate frosted. Yeah. And again, with all of these things, as we said last time, it doesn't mean that you never ever have another donut. You just don't want to start I know people that start their day with 2 donuts every day. That's their breakfast, 2 donuts. And they think that's a health, they think it's okay. And they'll get away with it for a while, but eventually your body catches up to you. Eventually it does catch up to you. So donuts, 400 to 500 calories each, full of sugar and all sorts of bad stuff. French fries. Okay, this is the #1 vegetable eaten in the United States is French fries. Sometimes when you look at the staggering numbers of potatoes that are consumed by McDonald's alone, the amount of, it's just a testament to the amount of abundance in this country that we can produce so many potatoes that one entity can utilize as many potatoes as they do, and chicken, and beef. I mean, it's just an amazing number. I should have them, next time I'll bring them. But I mean, it's just a staggering number of how many chickens go to McDonald's, how many cows go to McDonald's, how many potatoes go to McDonald's. So probably because of McDonald's, probably because of French fries, it's considered to be the #1 vegetable consumed in the United States. Totally void of significant nutrition. And deep fried and trans fat oil, and we'll see that in a little bit.
In other countries, rice is served every day. Potatoes are served here in the United States every day. I'm wondering why? What's so wonderful about potatoes?
Yeah.
That is like the rice.
The question is, rice and in other countries especially, and potatoes in the United States seem to be served every day at every meal. Well, at one time it was part of the triangle, right? Your plate was a triangle. You were supposed to have meat, vegetables, and a starch, right? It was important to get that starch in. But that's changed. That's largely changed. So we're moving away from that now. And with a lot of going to some of the countries that you're thinking of in terms of rice, that is cheap. I don't want to say nutrition because it's not nutritious. It's a cheap filling meal that fills the belly, but it's not nutritionally sound. But it is inexpensive to produce.
In Puerto Rico, rice and beans.
Right. Sister says in Puerto Rico, rice and beans, big dish, right? Now the beans have a lot of protein in it, so you can get away with that. But the rice, and again, when we talk about the anti-inflammatory diet, you'll see that one of the biggest groups that produces inflammation in our body is grain and grain products, including rice. Yeah. Okay, so French fries, we don't have to go too much more into that, huh? We all convinced French fries not really good for us. Now, if you take those, again, for those that are on the outside, if you buy those frozen fries and bring them home and bake them, that's a whole other story. You're not deep frying them in trans fat. So it's a whole different nutritional profile.
And here they serve French fries, but they're not.
But they're baked, yeah, so that's good. Yeah, I think, by and large, I think the nutrition here is very good. I mean, from what I've discussing it with the sisters that I see downstairs, it seems like they do care. They're on the right track, and I think that's mostly true. From a dietitian standpoint, they're not just looking to throw an inexpensive meal out there. They're really looking to provide nutritional meals, and the more you make choices along these lines, the more nutritional they become. Now, everybody finds it surprising to have milk on the menu, and I'm going to shake you a little bit here. Milk is not really a very good source of calcium. all right? That shakes you, right? That's what you were taught. You were taught, calcium builds strong bones and teeth, and you've got to have lots of milk. Drink that milk, right? A couple of things to think about. First of all, humans are the only species that drinks the milk of another species. We are the only species that drinks the milk, the mother's milk of another species. Mother's milk is formulated by God, and it's formulated by God for the animal that it comes from. For that, so milk is a wonderful source of all sorts of wonderful things for a calf, not for the human. The average milk has, cow's milk has something like 8 to 12 times the protein levels in it that mother's milk has. It's a tremendous load of protein. What happens when that protein hits your body as it processes it causes the blood to become slightly acidic. The body doesn't want the blood slightly acidic. It actually wants it a little bit alkaline. So it has to buffer all of that acid. And what does it use to buffer the acid? Calcium. So although there's calcium in the milk, it's fairly readily available. The calcium that's needed to buffer the enormously high levels of protein in the milk are used, and then the body needs more calcium. And where does it get that calcium from? Leaches it out of your bones. So dairy products actually rob you of calcium. And that's pretty shocking to most people. And it was a surprise to me but who indoctrinated the American Dairy Council? Now, doesn't that sound like a wonderful group of people, the American Dairy Council? It's a marketing group. It's nothing more than an advertising council. And they put this out there 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and we've been buying it ever since. All right, so calcium in milk. Now, milk in its raw form, a little bit better, okay? Again, very high in protein, but it's got a lot more enzymes in it that helps the body to break it down. But once we pasteurize it, once we homogenize it, and raise your hand if you've ever had raw milk. Okay, one out of the group. Most of the groups that I talk to have never had raw milk. I certainly have never had raw milk that I can attest to. So for most of us, the milk that we have is homogenized and pasteurized. Not a very good food source, unless you're a calf. Oh, the other thing is that humans are the only species that doesn't wean themselves off from milk when they become, a reasonable age. Okay, we're drinking milk well into our, adulthood. Many of us, all right. So now, again, if you have, I have milk in my coffee every day, or tea, a little touch of milk. That little touch of milk's not going to hurt you. But if you're drinking a 16-ounce glass of milk every day because you think it's bringing you strength, don't buy into that. Peanut butter. Again, we're looking at the devil's 10 worst foods. And why is peanut butter so bad for you? Peanut butter is loaded with sugar, white sugar in particular, trans fats, we're going to talk about them again, and salt. Okay, most Skippy, Jif, not to name but a few. Very high in salt, very high in sugar. Even again, for those on the outside that are buying, even the ones that advertise that they are lower sodium or low sugar, still have very high levels. This is one thing you want to buy: organic peanut butter that's got nothing added to it. It's just peanut butter. Some of the health food stores actually grind it for you while you're there. I mean, you just, they throw the peanuts in. You can't get any fresher than that. Almond butter is very good as a substitute. There's a lot of different nut butters. In this country it's peanut butter, but there's a lot of other nut butters that do very, very well. And again, you just want to look for something, again, that smallest ingredients list, right? When you look at this, it basically says peanuts on the side. That's what you're looking for. You want peanut butter. Okay, pork. Pork is a food that God told the Israelites not to eat. So if it's good enough for God, that's good enough for me. Pork as a production animal, let's call it that, as a factory production animal. We could go on and talk to you for days on how our food is produced in this country, how these animals are treated. But pork in particular, you ever hear slopping the hogs? Well, slop was everything that was left over that no other animal wanted to eat. They gave to the hogs, and the hogs would eat it. And so their existence is not a good one. It's one of those things that, even God says to stay away from. And again, the other white meat, pork, the other white meat, right? It's an advertising campaign. Okay, so no, it's not a good substitute for what we call lean protein: chicken, turkey, fish. That's lean protein. And again, we'll talk about that in another module. Okay, shellfish. Again, shrimp. How many like shrimp here? I do too. This doesn't mean you never ever eat shrimp again. It just means that you be aware that when you eat shrimp, that it's a stress to the body. Okay, it's not one of the best foods. And why? Because shrimp, lobsters, clams, oysters, where do they live? On the bottom. Okay, so when all those other fish are swimming up above doing their fish things, okay, where is that all falling down to? The bottom. And then these are filtering it, okay? And then we're eating clams and oysters. So when you open up that clams on the half shell, you know, and it looks really gross, it is. I mean, that dark substance in there is dirt and it's mud and who knows what else is in there. So again, you have to just be careful of that. Just be aware. Shrimp, lobster, clams, oysters, mussels, all bottom feeders. So again, some of the less healthy foods you can eat. Soda, diet and regular soda. But most people find it hard to believe diet soda. But between in a 12-ounce glass of Coke, there's something like 9 teaspoons of sugar. I mean, try that one day when you've got nothing else to do. Throw 9 teaspoons of sugar into a glass and see how much sugar that is. It's enormous. Also, there's a lot of salt in soda. Most people will find that after they're done drinking a soda, is your thirst really quenched? In most cases, not. Because there's a lot of sugar, there's a lot of salt and sugar in soda. Now, known to cause osteoporosis, where does that come from? Again, it's the same concept that we use with the milk. The carbonation in soda, and again, it's not just regular soda, it's diet soda too. The carbonation that's in the soda leads our blood to become slightly acidic, and the body tries to process that by using calcium as a buffer and leaches it out of your bones. So it leads to the osteoporosis issue. Besides the fact diet sodas, my sister has been telling me this for years, but it wasn't until I read the research that I really was convinced. But all of the artificial flavors now are being linked to dementias and Alzheimer's. The pink packet, the blue packet, the yellow packet. Right? They're all artificial sweeteners, all chemicals that are just made to trick your tongue into thinking it's sweet. And again, you know, soda is probably one of the number one issues, especially with children and childhood obesity. Trans fats, this keeps coming up. You know, it's the idea of deep frying stuff at very high temperatures creates this thing called trans fats. It tends to raise your bad cholesterol and lower your good cholesterol. Okay, so that's certainly not what you want to have happen. A lot of inflammation involved. Again, cellular inflammation, which we'll talk about again at another time. You'll see it labeled as partially hydrogenated. You know, when you read that, and you're going to start reading labels now. What's in this thing? But partially hydrogenated oils are these trans fats. White flour, you know, again, man in his wisdom, God creates this wonderful thing called wheat, you know, and it's got tremendous, you know, nutritional value to it. What do? We rip the husk off and we grind it up into a white powder. We bleach the powder because why? People, you know, there was a time back in the 40s and 50s people just wanted white. They wanted white bread. It seemed pure. Not only that, but it lasted a whole lot longer because nothing else wanted to eat it. You know, none of the pests wanted to eat it. White flour stays like forever, right? It never gets infested. So even the mice are smart enough to stay away from this stuff. But when you take that husk away, you remove the fiber, you remove the nutrition. Okay, whole wheat bread is just what it says. They take the whole wheat, they grind it husk and all, and they make the flour out of it. We're going to talk again. From an anti-inflammatory standpoint, wheat and wheat products, grain and grain products are on the avoid side of the list. Okay, for reasons that we'll talk about then. And white sugar, right? Sister brought up white sugar earlier. 76 ways that white sugar can ruin your health. And there's probably more than that, okay? So, I mean, and we all know that, right? We all know we're supposed to avoid white sugar. And again, if you go to that YouTube site, I mean, it really is an amazing story. And he actually, about a year or two after that, he was picked up by the New York Times, did a whole, the Color magazine of the New York Times, the whole front page and the whole main article in that magazine that week was on him and his research into white sugar and how bad it is for you. And again, not only just as empty calories, which we've kind of always assumed that's all it was, but it's actually poisonous to the system. The body processes it in a way that makes it quite poisonous.
I'd like to know, what is the best thing to use to sweeten your coffee in the morning?
Yeah, sister wants to know what's the best thing to use to sweeten your coffee in the morning. Well, I'll tell you what I use. I use white sugar. Now, I say that to make a point, okay? Because how much sugar do I really put in? Like a half a teaspoon. I don't put a lot in. So just that little bit. If that's the only time you're using white sugar during the day, go for it. I'm talking to a crowd here, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. You've gotten this far. So, but the real point is that, again, everything in moderation. My mother-in-law always said that until it came to having grandkids, and then she was like, go for it,
Is that preferable to the sweeteners?
There are some natural sweeteners out there. I'm being facetious, but there are some natural sweeteners out there. One is called stevia, which is a natural product. There is honey. I know you produce honey here on the property. I mean, I would be using that.
The yellow, I forgot the name of it. The yellow, that was supposedly for a while the one to use of the artificial.
Right.
But now they're saying, hold it, because they're finding out something.
Right.
I heard that on the news about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the sister says, that the yellow package used to be the one they were steering you towards as being healthier. But these are all chemicals. I mean, they're just chemicals that the body doesn't process well. And, you think back to cyclamates. We're all old enough to remember cyclamates, right? Everything had cyclamates in it. This was like the most wonderful thing God ever made since sliced bread, white sliced bread. And then we realized cyclamates were a cancer-causing chemical. So, they come out with this stuff, they push it out there, and a lot of times, guess who the test case is? You guys. So it goes out there, and then 10 years later, they look at the research and they go, oh, what we noticed? The people that use this have a higher incidence of this. Oh, we better take it off the market. Well, the damage is done. So that happens all too often. Sister?
What about raw sugar? Raw sugar.
Yeah, I don't know that it's got a different color and it's got a different texture because some of the cane is left in it through the process. It's probably got a little bit more nutritional value to it, but it's still in essence it's white sugar. Yeah, but it's probably a little bit healthier for you.
Different taste.
Different taste.
Yeah.
I read an article recently about diet soda. It said people who drink diet soda, of course it's not good for them, but what it does, it off-balances the insulin in the body.
Yes.
And that if you do drink it, you should eat something sweet with
Right.
it.
Right, and it's interesting because the studies have shown that people that do eat diet soda tend to gain weight, not lose weight. So, and it's for the same reason that I think it tricks your mind, it tricks your brain into wanting the substance that it represents, and then your body makes you hungry to eat something to give itself that satisfaction. Yeah, of course, we know eating. There's a lot of higher cognitive issues with eating. Being satisfied. So that's it. So those are the devil's 10 worst choices. And so again, the whole idea of this is to make wiser choices. For those of you that are here, now doesn't that look healthy? Just look at it. Sometimes our brains know better than we know. But that just looks healthy. But the idea is to make wiser choices. And again, if on one particular meal or one particular day, you move in that direction, towards less healthy, make you less healthy choices, that's okay. Balance it the next day with making far wiser choices, or the rest of the day with making far wiser choices. So if you know that tonight, at dinner, they're serving your favorite, apple crumb cobbler hot with ice cream on top, and you've got to have it, knowing that, have a healthier breakfast, have a healthier dinner, and then maybe go for that. So it's all about making choices, making wiser choices. And again, every choice that you make that brings you closer to that ideal of healthfulness and wellness is a step in the right direction and will have benefits to you.
Just one question. I see mushrooms. Mushrooms are supposed to be very good, but it wasn't on the good list.
No, again, the good list is kind of arbitrary. It's 10 foods, 11 foods that we know to have a lot of nutritional value to, but it's certainly not everything. There are many healthy fruits, many healthy vegetables. I'll give you a little insight into the anti-inflammation diet. The foods that tend to be anti-inflammatory at a cellular, at a gross level, are fruits, vegetables, and lean meats. All right, sound familiar? It's like every modern diet now is emphasizing fruits and vegetables and lean meats. And we'll tell you why the next time that's true. The inflammatory foods, the pro-inflammatory foods that create inflammation at a cellular level tend to be grain and grain products. That's the biggest one. White sugars, white flours. Yeah. So, what we've been told by the cancer guys, what we've been told by the cardiac guys, now we're starting to understand the biochemistry to it. So, any other questions?
No, in the picture, are they grapes on the side, or are they?
On the right side is grapes, looks like strawberries, that looks like a pear,
They're
some
not
cauliflower, here's some red grapes up top on the left,
Plums.
peaches, plums,
They're not
kiwis, the
They're not
kiwis.
lima beans, are they?
No, I don't think there's,
No, that's
No.
grapes.
grapes, corn, oranges. And again, for those of you that are here who are making choices here, whatever fruits and vegetables you can get, whether they're organic or not, is better than not eating fruits and vegetables. So don't let me dissuade you from that, okay? Even though certain fruits and vegetables do have a tendency, let's assume that they're properly prepared, properly washed, and that's not really an issue for you. For those on the outside, if you can buy organic, the stuff that does tend to hold on to pesticides, buy that organically. And the stuff that tends not to hold on to pesticides, buy at the regular price. Just read, as I was coming here this morning in the car, it's funny that it popped up, foods that 7 years ago were considered to be niche health foods, meaning things like kashi, things like Chobani yogurt, within now 7 years later are considered to be mainstream products. If you go, for those of you that shop, if you go into the supermarkets, almost all the supermarkets nowadays have a whole section, it's like a little mini market, that is all the organic foods and natural foods. They sequester them all. Now that's there for one reason and for one reason only, because people were looking for it and asking for it, and willing to spend a little bit of extra money to have something a little healthier. And so that's a good thing. So the idea is to educate yourself, as we're hoping you're doing here today, and make those wiser choices, both on the food line and at the supermarket. All right? So thank you very much. Thanks for those that are listening. Next time we will talk, since we're coming into I call it the new 5th season, the cold and flu season. You got winter, spring, summer, fall, and the cold and flu season. So the first week in December, we're going to do how to stay healthy during cold and flu season. We're going to talk about your immune system and the things that you can do, things that, from an exercise standpoint, from a nutrition standpoint, the foods that can help bolster your body's immune system and habits that you can adapt that will help lower your chances of picking up that dreaded cold and flu. Okay? Good. Thanks for coming.